I want to invite you to John, the 5th chapter this morning, please. John chapter 5. And I want to read the first 17 verses of that context. John chapter 5, if you'll open there, please. After these things, there was a feast of the Jews. And Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And there was in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches or porticos. In the pool of Bethesda, or in that porch it is, that there were laying a multitude of those who were sick, blind, lame, and withered, waiting for the moving of the waters. For an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred up the water. Whoever then first, after the stirring up of the water, stepped in was made well from whatever disease with which he was afflicted. And a certain man was there who had been 38 years in his sickness. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been a long time in that condition, he said to him, "Do you wish to get well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water's stirred up. But while I am coming, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Arise, take up your pallet and walk." And immediately the man became well and took up his pallet and began to walk. Now it was the Sabbath on that day. Therefore the Jews were saying to him who was cured, "It is the Sabbath. It's not permissible for you to be carrying your pallet." But he answered them, "He who made me well was the one who said to me, 'Take up your pallet and walk.'" They asked him, "Who's the man who said to you, 'Take up your pallet and walk'?" But he who was healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had slipped away while there was a crowd in that place. But afterward, Jesus found him in the temple, and he said to him, "Behold, you've become well. Do not sin anymore, so that nothing worse may befall you." The man went away, and he told the Jews that it was Jesus who made him well. And for this reason the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But he answered them, "My Father is working until now, and I myself am working." This morning I want to talk to you about making Jesus' habits our habits. Making his habits our habits. You might think this is a strange passage to go to, because here Jesus is healing. He is doing something miraculous to make someone well again. And so how can we make a habit like that, our habit? How can we do these kinds of things? Would you agree that healing was a habit of Jesus? I mean, is it something that he did with regularity? Is it something he did with frequency? If we're to talk to the man on the street about Jesus, after they say that, Jesus is the one who died for our sins, one of the things that the man on the street would probably say, if he were to tell you the story of Jesus, was that he did miracles, that he did amazing things. But it's precisely this activity of doing mighty deeds that I want us to think about this morning. I want to suggest to you that Jesus made a habit of doing mighty deeds, and we who are the followers of Jesus need to make a habit of doing mighty deeds. But I want to offer this qualifier for that. I want to suggest to you that that deeds don't have to be miraculous to be mighty. And if all we see in what Jesus did when he went to the pool of Bethesda, and when he made the lame man to walk again, or when he made the leper whole, or when he made the blind man see, or when he did any of the things that he did, if all we see in the deeds of Jesus are just the fact that they were miraculous, we're missing a big part of what was of the story and of the significance of the thing that he did. It's not just that they were miraculous that made Jesus' deeds mighty. There's much more to that. And so I want us to think for a little while today about the deeds that Jesus did, specifically the deed that he did here when he made this man whole again, and how his habit of doing mighty deeds can be a part of our habit and a part of our life as well. His habits bear our imitation. And so I want us to look at the habit of the mighty deeds that Jesus performed here. The first thing that I want you to note is the deed that Jesus did here, aside from being miraculous, was personal. Wasn't it? It was personal. Look at how Jesus has an interaction that is a one-on-one, face-to-face, very intimate and personal interaction with this man who for 38 years has been in this malady or this affliction of being unable to walk. Look at what it says in verse 5. A certain man was there who had been 38 years in his sickness, and when Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been a long time in that condition, he said to him, "Do you wish to get well?" Is that the question that you'd ask somebody whose hospital room you just walked into? That's not where I would start. Is it you? Especially if it's a person that's a stranger. I mean, this man doesn't know Jesus, as we find out later on. And he doesn't know his name even. And Jesus doesn't know him. They're not acquainted with each other at all. And yet Jesus he asked him a question that's very personal and that's very intimate. And could I say to you that the question exposes the thing that keeps us so often from being personal with people? Personal is awkward, isn't it? Personal is risky. And here is why personal is awkward for me. I might say something stupid. I mean, I might say something foolish in my interaction. I might ask the wrong question, and I open up and asking the question, all this world of hurt that's in someone's life today. I asked Laura when she came in today. I saw her face was a little red. I said, "How are you, Laura?" That was a dumb question. And then when Landry came in and I said, "How's?" and then he told me what was happening with. And I just felt so foolish. I had to run down the hall and find Laura and hug her because the question it exposed her anxiety this morning for her grandmother. And I stick my foot in my mouth all the time with people in saying things or asking things or doing things that is just that if I knew better it would be the wrong thing, but we can't let the fact that we might say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing keep us from exposing to people that we love them and that we care about them. And Jesus is all out in that respect. He is not reluctant to get close to people. Now, the reason he can ask the question, "Do you wish to be made well?" is because he knows what he's about to do next. And so this awkward moment is paving the way for what he's going to do when he answers the deepest petition of this man's heart. His question, "Do you wish to be made well?" doesn't just expose the fact that he's been sick for a long time and that he wants to be made better and that he's on this quest to be made better, but it also exposes the fact that he doesn't have any friends. He doesn't say anything to Jesus about his sickness. He talks to Jesus about how he doesn't have any friends. Jesus says, "Do you want to be made well?" And he says, "Sir, I don't have anyone to help me into the water when the angel stirs the water up, and someone always beats me to it," which says he's been here before. And don't you see in his statement to Jesus that there is a subtle kind of solicitation that if you're interested in me, maybe you'll hang around for a little while, and when the angel stirs up the water, maybe you can be the one that helps me in. But Jesus gets close to him. Jesus did not, in his care for people, just have Judas go around with the purse. You know, Judas was the treasurer for him and the disciples. And he didn't just send Judas out as the representative of the Jesus Club to go to the Pool of Bethesda or to go to other places around Jerusalem or around Galilee and just write checks for people that were in trouble, did he? Now, why didn't he do that? Could he have done a lot of benevolent activity? And I'm not dismissing the fact that there's not an appropriate time to give gifts to people. But the point I want to make from the way Jesus behaves here is that what he gave to people was personal. It was not Jesus and the disciples. It's just Jesus and this man here. And there needs to be with you and me and our relationships with people and with the folks in our world, there needs to be just me and you encounters. There needs to be just my caring for you and you caring for someone else. That's a part of what he calls us to, doesn't he? I am not a people person by nature. I am an idea person. I like to think. And I could be very content as a hermit somewhere, just doing something academic, just laboring over ideas or writing things. I love to write. But God has not called me just to have ideas that I keep in my head. God wants me to get out of my head and get connected to people. And it doesn't matter. It is awkward for all of us. I blunder all the time in the things that I say. I trip over my tongue, as you know well. But we can't let the awkwardness of that, and we can't let the risk of that be something that keeps us from getting connected to people. Wherever you're willing right now, to just be more engaged with the people that God has put in your life, I just want to encourage you to do that. I want to encourage you to make the habit of getting a little more uncomfortable, getting a little more awkward, being a bit more risky, and just showing other people the love of God in your life. Could you do that? Could you? Give me something. Could you? Could we do that? He's called us to that, and He's modeled that for us. And so when we see in the deeds of Jesus just the miracles of Jesus, we're missing part of what's there. It's the personal nature of the miracles. Jesus could have wowed us just by parting seas and by moving mountains. But the mountains He moved were not just to move a mountain. It wasn't just so that Red Mountain was over here and now it's down south. It wasn't just that He dried up some kind of sea just to show people He could do that. The things that He did were things that were personal. This man cared about whether he walked again or not. And Jesus cared about whether He walked again or not. Much more than that. But He starts with something that matters to this man. And we need to start there in our relationships with people as well. Number two, not only are Jesus' deeds here mighty because they're personal, but they're mighty because they're practical. They're mighty because they're practical. Just like I said, He doesn't do things that are sensational and just stupendous for the sake of causing people to fall down and say, "You are somebody, Jesus." He meets needs that are real needs. He meets needs that are real needs and that are the felt needs of people. Here is the mistake that I can make in the way that I minister or the way that I serve or the way that I show care for people. I can limit what I do to something that is comfortable for me, for something that is convenient for me, for something that is at my preference level and not at the level of their conscious need. I tried to say that as carefully as I could because I want you to see that this man has a very conscious need. He is sick and he's lonely. And that's where Jesus touches him. Now he has greater needs than that. Look at what it says in verse 14 when Jesus comes and finds him again. He finds him in the temple and Jesus said to him, "Behold, you become well. Do not sin anymore so that nothing worse may befall you." Does this man have greater needs than just being sick and lonely? Yeah, Jesus addresses the fact that there's some life change that he needs as well. But where does Jesus start with him? Does he start with the fact that he's a sinner and he needs to straighten his life up? Now, is Jesus, when he starts with the fact that he's sick and when Jesus starts with the fact that he's lonely, does that mean that Jesus doesn't care about the fact that he's a sinner? Of course he cares about the fact that he's a sinner. But he starts with something that this man can appreciate. He doesn't know he's talking to Jesus. He just knows that he's talking to someone who happened by when he's here with all these sick people trying to get better. And so Jesus, he comes to him and he touches him with something that is practical. It is a felt need of this man, a conscious need of him. And Jesus shows that he cares about the fact that the man is sick and about the fact that the man is lonely. Now, if I had encountered him, what could I do for him? If I had walked in and met this man, what could I do for him? I mean, I couldn't tell him to get up and walk. But could I start by being his friend? You know, I could say to him, fella, you know, I'm not very big. But I'm going to pick you up and I'm going to get you a little closer to the water. And as soon, you and I, we're going to watch it together, and as soon as you see a ripple, we are going in, man. You're going into the water? I mean, if I could do that, that's something I could do. It's a way that the way that I could help. If we could just learn to start not with where we want to start with folks, but if we could start where it will be meaningful to them, it will be personal and it will be practical. Jesus always does that. Read about the healing that he does. Read about the miracles, and he does something that people, they appreciate what he's doing because it touches where they are. And I've got to learn to do that. I could carry around a list in my head of things that I like to do for people, things that I want to do for people. But you know, I encounter people all the time who don't fit my list. And so what do we wait until until something happens to them that's the thing that's the thing that I like to do? Or do I instead change my heart so that I react to where they are and to what they need? Jesus does that. Could we together make that a habit? It's what Jesus modeled for us. We do mighty deeds when we do deeds that are personal and when we do deeds that are practical. Number 3, the kind of care that Jesus showed this man, the deeds that he did were conspicuous. They were conspicuous. Conspicuous means that it's distinctive. Conspicuous is something that makes you look. Conspicuous is something that makes you look twice. It's something that gets your attention, conspicuous is. It's something that's arresting. You say, wow, when you see something conspicuous because it commands your attention. Now, Jesus did things that were conspicuous, but it's not just the uncommon power that Jesus demonstrates that makes his deeds conspicuous and arresting. It is the uncommon care that's behind his uncommon power, is it not? It's the uncommon care that's behind his uncommon power that's a part of what makes his deeds conspicuous or distinctive. Where are most religious people on the Sabbath day during a Jewish festival in Jerusalem? Where, John? Yeah, they're in the temple, aren't they? In fact, this fell after Jesus makes him well. He goes to the temple, and other Jews see him in the temple carrying his pallet. And so, you know, where religious people, where they're going to be on the Sabbath day, and we're told that this is during a feast. I mean, they're going to the temple, they're going to the synagogues, they're going to worship. Then they're going home, and they're going to be with their family, right? And it's a day for family. And here's Jesus, though, on the Sabbath day during a feast, and he's at the pool of Bethesda where all the sick people are assembled, all the untouchables. Where's the rest of the people? I mean, where's the city at? Where are the Pharisees at? I mean, they're doing what you're supposed to do on the Sabbath day and during the feast day. But here's God, and he comes on the Sabbath day. Here is God who's made flesh, and he comes on a feast day. And where's he at? He's where the people are. He's where the hurting people are. He's where the untouchables are. And so he's walking among the sick people who are there at the pool of Bethesda, waiting for, hoping for, longing for a miracle today. Longing for, hoping for, waiting for deliverance. Longing for, waiting for, hoping for rest. It's the Sabbath. And here's a man that doesn't. How did he get himself down there if he didn't have any friends? Did he drag himself on his bed through the street? Did he pay someone? How did he get there? I'd like to know how he got there. But this man gets there, and he's not a man that's experiencing any kind of rest in his life, and he wants to rest. And Jesus comes and he shows an uncommon care even for religious people. He shows an uncommon care for this fellow in the depth of his need. Jesus all the time goes out of his way to yield his strength to lifting man's yoke, to carrying man's burdens. And I can't do something conspicuous like making a sick man whole again. But can I show the conspicuous care that Jesus did? I mean, it's not just that he left the temple to come here. It's not just that he left the synagogue to come here. Jesus, he came down from heaven to go and hang out with the sick people at the pool of Bethesda. Jesus steps down from things that are comfortable from him, from a position that he has a right to occupy. He stepped down from that so he could come and he could mingle with these folks. And yield the strength that he had as the Son of God in order to minister, in order to lift this man's burden. Now, I can meet him there. I can do that. I can come down from Chelsea Park. I can come down from my ridge. I can come down from my high place. I can come down from the strength and the position and the blessings that God has given me. And I can yield the strength that he has given, what little I have. I can yield the strength that I have to show care for someone else. To carry their yoke, to lift their burden, to bear the cross, whatever that cross be. Is that conspicuous when we do that? And the point of that is not to shine a light on us. When Jesus was done ministering to this man still didn't know who Jesus was. He didn't know his name. And so Jesus is not shining a spotlight on himself by the conspicuous care that he shows. He's shining a spotlight on the value of this man. The thing that this man knows when it's over with is that he mattered to Jesus. Not that Jesus ought to matter to him. And so the power of that uncommon care is arresting. It's transformative for this man because he knows that he matters to somebody when he didn't think he mattered much at all. Let me say one more thing about this text. There's actually several more things that I want to say, but I'm going to save them because I want us to hear them and not pass over them too quickly. But let me say one more thing about the care that he shows here, and we'll talk some more about some other elements about the mighty deeds of Jesus next week. The mighty deeds of Jesus are demonstrative. When I say that they're demonstrative, I mean that they showed something. They didn't just tell something, they showed something. How does this man know about love? Is it because Jesus said, "I love you"? It's because Jesus showed that he loved him, right? Jesus knows that this man knows that Jesus cares because of something that Jesus did. And isn't that the message of the gospel, where we see the power and the grace of God? It's in the fact that God demonstrated his love for us, Romans chapter 4 and 5. He demonstrated his love for us in that he gave us his only begotten Son. He didn't just tell us he loved us, he showed us that he loved us. And that is the habit of Jesus. He's showing people all the time that he loves them and that they care about him, and that he cares about them. Jesus shows people the power of God. He shows people what the reign of God looks like in someone's life. When God is in control of your life, this is how you love people. This is how you care for people. Jesus shows them the character of God because Jesus shows them poverty of spirit. Jesus shows them gentleness. Jesus shows them mercy and compassion. He doesn't preach a sermon to this fella. He shows him these things. He says things to him later, but he begins first with showing him these things. And the showing him is arresting. We need to be demonstrating to people the power of God. We need to be demonstrating to people the love of God. We need to teach people about meekness and teach people about character and teach people about patience and about long-suffering and about forgiveness because we show them in the way that we behave. They need to experience that. They need to experience that from us. I'm good at telling people stuff. I do it every Sunday. I tell you stuff. And we have Bible classes and I tell you stuff there. That is not what God has called me to do and to be, is just to tell you stuff, to tell us stuff. He wants me to show. He wants people to experience that. And I need to bring, in my behavior, in my relationship with you, and my relationship with other people, I need to bring them the experience of God's reign because they see it, because they feel it, because it's something that's tangible. And Jesus has shown this man, He's let him experience something that is tangible, that's a demonstration that the kingdom of God is here. God is nearby to you. God loves you. God cares about you. And it's His demonstration that communicates that message. Well, part 2 next week, okay? Thank you all for listening so good this morning. Make this week, if you would, a habit of mighty deeds. Not miraculous. Mighty. And it will make a difference for God, and it will make a difference for others if we do things for people that's personal. Don't walk through the awkward of getting personal. Run the risk of being personal. Do things that are practical, that meet the real felt needs of the people around you. Do things that are conspicuous, that are uncommon in their care, and things that demonstrate to others the heart of God so that they see that God is near, so they experience His reign and His love in their life. That's what Jesus did, and that's what He's called us to do and to model to other people. The heart that Jesus showed this man in the pool of Bethesda is the heart that He has for me and the heart that He has for you. Do you believe that? We're all the man. We're all the man. And Jesus is mighty to save, and He will move all mountains for you to address the things that you really need in your life. And if you need His reign in your life today, if you need to surrender to His kingdom and His power, then there's no better day to do that than right now. And if we can help you with that walk and with that beginning, then won't you come as together we stand and as we sing.